Hello again, and welcome to the Soccer Media Podcast. I'm John Shrader. It's our weekly look at the soccer media business and the business of soccer. In a minute, we'll hear from Mark Donaldson, soccer announcer at ESPN, where he does a number of things and dabbles in some other sports as well. The native of Edinburgh, Scotland, has been with the mothership, as they call it, since 2010. Before we get to Mark, may I ask you to like us, subscribe, send us a comment, throw us some ideas. We certainly would appreciate it. We've heard on this program from Taylor Twellman, JP Dellacamera, Andres Cantor, Jordan Angeli just recently, who worked with both Mark and JP in her career. This is a new venture, so we would really appreciate it if you could pass the word. Okay, thanks for being here and our chat with broadcaster and author Mark Donaldson. We continue our journey through America, North America, and Europe to talk about and with the most interesting people in the business of soccer media. And this gentleman, I think, is a very interesting chap, Mark Donaldson, who is a Scotsman by birth and lives in the U.S. and has for quite a while. Mark, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
No worries. How are you, John?
We're chatting. Good, thank you. We're chatting. I'm in the Midwest and you're on the East Coast. Yeah. But as I mentioned, you are a native of Scotland, but you've been here for quite a while. Let's just start with this. Why did you come here? What was the reason you ended up in the USA?
Yeah, I ended up in the USA in 2010, and a lot of thanks to Derek Rae, who's a friend and colleague of mine. And I got to know Derek. I actually grew up listening to Derek on the radio, doing Hearts games. And I subsequently worked for Hearts, among other people. Hearts is a soccer team in Edinburgh who are currently top of the league. And when I worked for them doing commentary, I also wrote a book because they sacked the manager when he was successful because he was too successful. And the owner was a Russian guy called Vladimir Romanov, and he didn't like the success of the manager because he wasn't getting any praise himself. So I wrote a book about this. ESPN had a show at the time, which is now ESPN FC, called SoccerNet Press Pass, which Derek was either a host or a reporter on. And he came over to Scotland. He is Scottish himself, from the north. Came over to Scotland, and I was one of the people he interviewed because I'd written the book. We kept in touch. And then in 2009, he said there might be an opening at ESPN because I'm going to be flying over to do games in Scotland every weekend. So they might be looking for someone over in the States. So I applied. Didn't hear anything for a year. I got asked to fly over to the States. I was already in the United States, having just proposed to my fiance at the time, now my wife, and drove up the next day, did a demo with Janusz Mihal, an AC Milan Cesena game. Got the job 3 weeks later. So 16 years on nearly, here I am.
And you're still here, and you live here full time. Don't want to betray any of your privacy, but you live in the U.S. full time mostly, yeah?
Yes, I do. I got American citizenship in 2019. So dual nationality. Our daughter was born over here in 2018. So yeah, this is home. We've had the conversation with Ava Grace, our daughter, and myself and my wife, and she's like, Daddy, where's home? And it's an interesting one because home can be more than just where you grew up. Home is over here, but home is always where the heart is, which is Scotland as well. So yeah, it's an interesting one to have that discussion with younger kids when they ask, where's home? And I don't think it's bad that you can say it might be more than one place.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty cool for young people to have the experience of the neighborhood and the kids around the neighborhood and family who have here. And then they go to Scotland and it's a different experience, right? It's a different groove.
Yeah, and it's the same here. I mean, you think about it, it takes less time to fly from Boston to the United Kingdom than it does from Boston to LA. So it might be across the pond. So there's no real difference between the way I look at it, flying over to Scotland or flying to LA. So it's the same scenario there. If you've got family on the East Coast and you're on the West Coast, or vice versa. I mean, you're in Nebraska right now. That's not the easiest place to get to with direct flights. So it's still going to take a fair bit of travel. But in this country, that's the difference. In this country, the American people don't blink twice at maybe having to do a 5-6 hour journey, whereas we can get to a different continent if we do that in Europe. So it's not an issue. And I love the fact there's the cosmopolitan growing up of her having us as Scottish parents, Scottish American parents, and I think it just broadens the scope. It broadens the horizon. And when I came over, just briefly to go back to your original question, I got the opportunity, having been headhunted, to come over here, and I thought, you know what, I'd rather do it if I get the opportunity than regret having not taken that opportunity and spent my life saying, what if? And it's worked out, and we love the fact that we have an American Scottish daughter to Scottish American parents.
Yeah, there you go. I was going to ask this a little bit later, Mark, but what do you think I mean, a lot of Europeans have traveled in the U.S.
Sure.
But maybe they've gone to New York or Boston or Miami or maybe Los Angeles, but maybe they haven't done a lot of Los Angeles to New York or or Chicago to Miami. What do you think the people from around the world are going to think about this crazy travel when they come this summer for the World Cup?
Good question. It's going to be difficult. I mean, look, it's not like it hasn't happened before. I mean, even when the World Cup was in Mexico, 1970, 1986, you're kind of based in two places. You're going to have to travel. From a Scotland perspective, we're back at the World Cup for the first time since 1998, and we've probably got one of the easier schedules because we've got 2 games in Boston and 1 game in Miami. And it hasn't been confirmed, but at the time of you and I speaking, it looks like Scotland are going to be based in Charlotte, which is nowhere near Boston and kind of nowhere near Miami, albeit a fair bit closer. But Steve Clarke just wants to get away from it all. And it was the same when we were in Germany in the Euros in 2024. He wanted to be based, I think it was on the Austrian border and away from everything. From a fan's perspective, travel over here is easy. I mean, I'd spent some time in the Pacific Northwest, having taken time after doing the Portland NWSL quarterfinal, went up to Seattle, went up to Vancouver as well. It's easy to get around, but you just have to fly. The issue is getting around without a car if you're not in a city center, but we find a way. And I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue for people getting around because we know it's in 3 countries and there's a lot of distance to try and get around.
Yeah, one of the great things I love, not only about the people and the food and everything else about being in Europe, is it's so easy to get around. Go get your Metro pass, jump on the subway, jump on the tube, wherever you are. It's not that easy here if you get outside of New York and outside of a couple of other places. That might be the sort of cultural reckoning that some people have to deal with, right?
Yeah, I mean, from a Scottish perspective, we took over 200,000 people to Germany because we hadn't qualified for a major tournament outside of our own land because the Euro 2020 and 21 was kind of played in Scotland and England and whatever. And it was magnificent. And I took the train. I was there for 2 weeks. I took the train all over Germany and loved it. Can't do that here. You can take the train between the big cities. But what we found is we'll probably have about 25 to 30,000 Scots over here. There's obviously a big expat community, especially in Boston and down in Florida as well. However, we're finding a lot of Scots aren't staying in Boston. They're staying in Rhode Island, whether it's Providence or different places like that. And obviously being from Connecticut or living in Connecticut right now, I know the area pretty well. Scots fans are all over the place. There's people that they're going to spend time in Toronto and Montreal and Canada just to fly down or come down for the games. So a huge population up north. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to spend time in Nova Scotia. I went on a cruise with the family up there. Loved it. Nova Scotia, New Scotland. So there's Scots everywhere. We found our way over here. I think we'll be all right finding our way between Boston and Miami.
Yeah. It is one of the greatest things about this country. One of its top strengths is that there's pockets of Scots, there's pockets of Iranians, there's pockets of Poles. There's everywhere in America, there will be expats who have a team in the World Cup that they are going to cheer for. And I think that is awesome. That's what makes us so damn interesting, I think.
Agreed, totally agree. And going back to Germany, the number of different nationalities that we were able to have fun with, go for a drink with, arm in arm, no trouble whatsoever. There wasn't one Scottish arrest, which I think is incredible for 200,000 people. And the alcohol involved, that's pretty impressive. But we're here to have fun. We'll come to the World Cup and we'll enjoy it. And it'll be different. It'll be brilliant to see the Haitian population that live in the Boston region and mingle with them. I mean, goodness me, Brazilians in Miami, you don't have to go far to find some of them, and they love a party. Haiti is good, or Haiti is a good game for us because it's something different. And we played Brazil and we played Morocco in 1998, and they both beat us, and they'll probably beat us again. But we had a great time with their supporters. But it's not something new. We seem to get Brazil every time we qualify for a World Cup. Played them in 98, played them in 1990, played them in 1982, played them in 1974. Not complaining, because you want to test yourself against some of the best nations, Carlo Ancelotti and co. But from a fan's perspective, Miami Beach doing the samba with the Brazilian fans, I think they'll look slightly better in bikinis and trunk shorts than we might. But hey ho, it's all fun.
You'll be able to know who's who that way.
Maybe.
I think if there's anything that is the most memorable experience from the 1994 World Cup in Northern California, where I lived, was that Brazil was headquartered in Los Gatos, California, which is a little town near San Jose. And the experience culturally in San Jose, the South Bay, was incredible. They danced and they partied and they drank and they did everything you can imagine. And it was as memorable a part of the World Cup as I think anybody in the Bay Area has had. And that's the cool thing that people all over America are going to discover.
That's what I found when I was in Germany for the Euros. I stayed in. I like to kind of visit different places, and I ended up in a place called Weinstadt just because the hotel prices in the city centres of where we were playing were so expensive. And I went on a hike one Sunday morning, the day we were playing Hungary, got to the top, and it was like Captain Scot of the Antarctic, who gets there and finds out he's already been beaten by Amundsen, who's planted his Norwegian flag. And I get to the top of the hill, and there's two Hungarians sitting enjoying some goulash and a bottle of wine. I'm like, come on now, it's nowhere sacred. But it was brilliant. They invited me. We had a great time, got some photos taken, and that's what it's all about. That's what major tournaments are all about. And one thing we don't really have in the UK and in Europe is the tailgating scene that you have here. I don't think American soccer has the intensity that we have in Europe, but I think when you can combine what we have with our intensity of the fanaticism of supporters, plus the tailgating here, and it's different over here because whatever sport, I mean, living where I do in Connecticut, I've been to Yankees Mets, I've been to Yankees Red Sox. I haven't quite seen that intensity, even although there's a rivalry of the fan base. It borders on hatred, which I don't like the word, but from a football perspective, it can make an occasion in Europe. If you've been to a Celtic Rangers game, you know exactly what I feel like. But it doesn't have to be that. Hearts Hibs is our local game. In England, in France, in Turkey, anywhere you go, there's that kind of huge rivalry. Whereas over here, there's a lot of positives about American soccer. I don't quite think you've got that intensity yet in the sport, which isn't a bad thing. It depends what you're looking for when you go to a game.
Maybe in 100 years, when we've been around for that long, and these teams have, when I don't know, when San Jose and Los Angeles have been playing each other for 100 years, maybe it'll be the same. I don't know.
Maybe you'll have promotion and relegation by then.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think there's a lot of people who think it's not. Hey, Mark, one of your gigs at ESPN, the Disney World, is Bundesliga.
Yeah.
Derek Rae, who I've had on this podcast, talks eloquently about his love of Germany and the language, and it started when he was very young, and he speaks the language fluently. My question to you is when you broadcast Bundesliga games, even when you're sitting in a studio in Bristol, Connecticut, How important is it to understand the culture, the history, the sort of groove, the feel of Germans watching the game when you're broadcasting it?
I think it's important. I mean, I do some Bundesliga. Derek's the kind of Meister of Bundesliga, and he is totally embedded in everything to do with German football. I don't pretend that I am, because I'm not. And you kind of, one of the things I got told when I came over here, one of the best pieces of advice is know what you don't know. And don't BS people. Don't try and be someone you're not. Don't say you're at a game when you're not. But don't say you're in a studio. Because when you do get the opportunities, as we do quite frequently, to go to games, you shouldn't make it sound like, oh, we're here. And Derek does the world feed. He's at the games. Derek's the master when it comes to Bundesliga. So you can strive to be like him. But I don't think you get the same authenticity that Derek provides. He's at the games. He does a wonderful job. His pronunciations are spot on, the effort he puts into that. I work a lot in La Liga with one of my colleagues, Alex Pareja, who's from Catalonia. And we go into the kind of areas of Spain. And it's not like we're doing a broadcast from a tourist perspective, a tourist board trying to get them to various areas. But having spent time in Spain and covered games in Spain, you can pass on the information, like in Seville, how the scent of the city with the azar tree makes it 9 months out of the year one of the best smelling cities in all of the world. What to do in these places, the type of food. Because ultimately, while we're broadcasting, Derek does it very well with Bundesliga, and I'd like to think we do it pretty well as well in La Liga, despite the fact we're not there. We do have the authenticity of having colleagues who have either played there. Casey Keller from the Pacific Northwest spent time at Rayo Vallecano. Diego Forlan, who we had for a spell, who played in England and for Uruguay at the World Cup. I do games with Luis Garcia. So there's always someone that can bring something to the table. And I think it's important for us as commentators on TV, as play-by-plays, not to tell you what you're watching, because that's a bugbear of mine. That's radio. That's what we do. We can see what you can see on TV. We're the accompaniment, not the star of the show. We should make it something that you learn something, you enjoy something, but you don't go away going, my goodness, he spoke that too much or whatever. So there's authenticity, and there's making sure you know what you don't know by trying not to be someone who you're not.
So I guess maybe I should have said you do La Liga more regularly than Bundesliga. So how many broadcasts do you do average in a year? And and part of that question is how many of those do you actually get to sit in the stadium and watch the games?
Not many. As far as actually being at the stadium, I've commentated on games in the Stadio Olimpico. I've been to many games across Spain. We used to have Serie A rights, but the majority of the games are done from Bristol, Connecticut. Simply because, this weekend, for example, I've got Real Betis on Sunday against Atletico Madrid, and on Saturday I've got Real Sociedad are taking on Elche. Now, that game's also going live to TSN in Canada. It's going live to Disney Plus in the United Kingdom. It's going live to the Netherlands. Now, on the Saturday, Real Sociedad play in San Sebastian in northern Spain. And then on the Sunday, our game is in, I think it's Madrid, who are playing Betis. But if that was in Seville, you can't go from top to bottom if there's an issue in Spain with trains or whatever, or with flights, and you miss your game. So it's costly as well. We have a team over there. Luis Garcia is in Madrid. I was commentating last weekend with Mario Suarez, a former Atletico Madrid player who is based in Madrid and Mallorca. So we have a team over there, Martin Einstein, and we always have a pitch-side reporter. So we do have a presence at the majority of the games that we do. But from a play-by-play perspective, a number of times, to your question, we do a game on a Saturday and a game on a Sunday. If we've got the late game on a Saturday and the early game on a Sunday, and we're in Asturias on a Saturday, our game, or we're in San Sebastian or Bilbao, and then our game on the Sunday is in Seville or somewhere down south, it's not very practical to be able to be over there when we still have ESPN FC digital content to do. And I'll be talking about the Premier League games. I'll finish the show at, say, 12:30 Eastern, and I'll be in the studio by 1:30. So there's a lot for us to do here that precludes us from being on site as play-by-play and analysts, but we do have the facilities and we do have the people over there that provide us with pitch side access, and we can get the flavor of what's happening from them.
So a young person wants to be a soccer announcer, and I have a number of them in my classes here at the University of Nebraska, and a couple of them who are actually working professionally. What would be your advice to a young person who spent most of their time watching sports in the stadium and now have to carve a career out of broadcasting the game in front of a big monitor? What would you say to a young person about how to get that started?
That was me when I came over here in 2010. I went to games, many different games, many different stadia. And then suddenly I'm in a studio and I'm broadcasting many games, but different games from different countries. We can see what you can see. So don't guess. If you see something and you're not sure, you see a goal scorer and you're not sure, keep it generic. It's not difficult. I think there's a thing in journalism now, it's all about being first. I'd rather be right. I'd rather keep it generic and be right. It'd be nice to be first, but it's not all about saying who the goal scorer is, because if you're wrong, it just looks silly and you have to backtrack and whatever. But if you're generic and you're not sure, don't guess. Just keep it simple. And less is more would be the other thing as well, because I went from radio to TV, which I think is much easier than going from TV to radio. And these days, with a lot of people doing TV and radio and going back between the two, a lot of people are doing radio commentaries on TV, which is annoying as a viewer because I can see what you can see. So for me, less is more, and don't guess. If you can't see it, keep it generic. That would be the advice that I would give for those who are commentating on a monitor. And I do, just as a favor to friends who own Hartford Athletic, I do some USL commentaries in the East Coast that go out on ESPN Plus and some games that go out on CBS Sports Network. But I'm at the stadium for those games. And there's a number of times I've just done a La Liga game from a booth in Bristol, and then suddenly I've got the full picture. It's like going from the old 4:3 to 16:9 to full screen as far as the TV is concerned. You can see a lot more when you're there, but when you're not there, you don't have to pretend that you are, and you don't guess as to what you might see or might not see, because quite often you're wrong.
You generally, I think it's fair, American announcers and European announcers, especially like goal calls and big minutes, big moments of games, have a little bit different style. The American style is, John Shrader might have said, and De Rosario, goal! And he does that thing, and then he lays out and the crowd goes crazy, and maybe you don't get back to talking to the audience until you see the replay. It's a little different in the European style, maybe even in the UK style, which is you sort of talk through the grand moment of the goal. Is that a fair observation? And does that ever sort of collide in your sort of presentation of your sort of cross-Atlantic work?
I don't think I've changed that much. As far as my goal calls are concerned. I think that's probably the strongest part of my commentary. I get the moment, but I'll also let it breathe. One of my favorite goal calls was when I was with Craig Burley doing the Spanish Cup final, Barcelona against Athletic Club at Camp Nou in 2015. It was live on ESPN, and for me, I don't care if it's on Plus, if it's a USL game, if it's an NWSL game. How many viewers doesn't come into it for my prep, for the way that I call games as well? Look, if your team's 6-0 up, you're not going to give it laldi, as we would say, give it huge licks when the 7th goal goes in. It's about feeling the moment. That was a cup final. It was Messi that scored the goal. For me, it's still his greatest ever goal. He picks the ball up on the halfway line, beats 6 or 7 players. And I became the guy in the pub, which I like, because he scored it and I just said, that's ridiculous. And there's nothing I could add to that because it was impossible. There's no way that he could score this. Craig Burley was brilliant. He let it breathe, and he's like, look, he's in a phone box. It's locked, and the key isn't there, but he's still found a way out. And it's the moment, and there are supporters who are watching that, Barcelona fans. It's their moment as well. So don't spoil it. Don't spoil it for them. If you've got nothing to add that you don't think is worth adding. For example, this is very stats-driven country, and I like that because I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to the stats. And we get loads and loads of stats, but pick and choose the ones you want. That's the 171st goal that he scored in his career. Who cares? It's not the 200th or the 200. It's not a landmark goal. So just because you have it doesn't necessarily mean you need to use it. I'll prep 5-6 hours for every game. I've got my own commentary sheet, which I prep and have done for 30 years now, put a lot of work into that. I'll probably use 5 or 10% of that commentary sheet in every game, if that, but it's my comfort blanket. I've got all the info, but I don't need to give you all the info if it's not relevant to what I'm seeing. So the goal calls, yeah, I think that's the strongest part of my commentary. Unfortunately, I'm doing a lot of Atletico Madrid. I say unfortunately, I love the fact I'm doing a lot of Atletico Madrid games right now because they're fun to do most of the time, but unfortunately, they're not scoring many goals right now. So the goal calls and the voice has been protected a little bit, but I look forward to them finding the back of the net with a little bit more regularity along with Barcelona and Real Madrid, so I can give it loudly, as we would say.
You talked about going from the commentary booth into the studio and sometimes having very little time to get. There are two different kinds of roles. They're different scenes. They're different presentations. How do you pivot so quickly from one part of this, which is a lot of adrenaline driven, and then another part where it's really a lot more scripted? It's a lot more laid out for you in the studio than the game. You call the game that's happening in front of you. In the studio, it's a lot more scripted. How do you make that pivot so quickly and so easily?
I'm not a big fan of scripts. I understand, obviously, when you do Sports Center or things like that, you've got a rundown, you've got a running order, and you stick to that. But from a personal perspective, I think it's far more natural. And that goes back to when I started at ESPN in 2010. We obviously have our own way of doing things in the UK, but you come over here. My producer was a Kiwi, a girl from New Zealand, and she said that me and the auto cues weren't great together. We weren't great bedfellows, but naturally was far better. And we did a US Open tennis show for 5 years for Australia. And I got my kicks from saying or being told by the producer, right, we're going to go live, or we're doing it as live. You've got 30 seconds. You need to nail it. You've got Roger Federer, who's 5-3 up in this set, about to win it, and you've got 10,000 fans coming from the top tier of Arthur Ashe who are going to make a noise, and you'll not be able to do this if you don't do it first time. Some people that might be too much, but for me, that's what drives me. Whether it's hosting, whether it's giving me 30 seconds to do it. I suppose in radio, it's like hitting the vocal. It just becomes natural after a time. There's a lot of things there's a lot of people that are far better at doing than me. But pressure, I thrive. I like to think I thrive on pressure. Whereas, as I said, there's other things whereby I wish I was as good as some of the people that do it. But just don't overthink it, John. Don't.
Yeah.
You know what it's like. You were doing the San Jose. You've done a lot of soccer commentary. You're now involved in the teaching profession. You don't overthink it. I'm sure there were butterflies in your stomach the first day that you were doing something new. I love doing that, but it quickly becomes something that we are, whether you teach or me doing hosting or presenting or commentating, it's just what we do. It's like, funnily enough, my sister is she used to be a professor and fashion professor at a university in England, and she's like, I don't know how you do that, and you go on TV and you speak to all these people. I'm like, hold on a second. I don't see any of them. You're standing up in front of an auditorium full of students, and that's, if you're not used to it, you are now, and I'm sure public speaking is something that comes easy for you. But when you're not used to it, it's the first time you do something, it's sink or swim. And in this industry, if you don't swim, there's not much chance for you going forward.
Yeah. I think, and not to say that we're like LeBron James or Messi or something, but there is some muscle memory there too. You do all your preparation. I use this metaphorically with students. It is like playing sports. You spend all those hours preparing. You spend all those hours putting it together. And when the light goes on, you play the game. And the preparation that you've done makes your work so much better. And the muscle memory of the work you do day after day after day after day comes back to you, combined with the preparation, and it just happens. It just happens.
And that's the way it's got to be. So a referee's whistle for a young boy or girl playing sports at school or at college is the same as the red light mic live for us. Okay, fine, great. We do what we do. But I guarantee you, the first time you hear that referee's whistle in your first game for your school or college, and the first time we saw the mic live sign, yeah, there's butterflies, but you learn to deal with them. You learn to cope with them. And the things you're good at, you stay good at and try and improve yourself. And the things you're not good at, you try and improve and you try and be better at them. Because regardless of the age we're at, we can always get better and we can always learn. And the frustrating thing is when you hear someone you think, I could maybe do it personally. You don't broadcast this or boast about it. When you hear someone you think, I could maybe do a better job than them. And then on the other hand, I do a lot of golf and a lot of tennis. And there are people there who that's their job. I come into that once or twice a year and I know they're better than me. So the hypocritical part of me saying, oh, I should be doing that because I think I'm better than that commentator or whatever. And then you can't be selective. For the person involved, there's selective hypocrisy. I should be doing that, but you don't think about the other side. The other side is there's far better people than me that should maybe be doing the tennis or doing the golf. But hey, as a friend of mine, my daughter's godfather, Trey Wingo says, who used to be at NFL Live at ESPN, we were standing on the 18th hole at Pebble Beach or wherever we were, St. Andrews or somewhere. And he said, he looked around and he says, you know what? Someone's got to be us today. So why not us? And it wasn't meant as a boast. It was just look, this is what we've kind of worked for. So take it in. And I was like that at Centre Court at Wimbledon. I didn't know if it was going to be the last Wimbledon I covered. The older you get, the more you appreciate what you have. And the more you appreciate, do you know what? This might be the last one that you do. So take it in. Enjoy it. Trying to tell that to a 7-year-old daughter is a little bit different though. But hey.
Yeah. She'll get it. You mentioned that you have written 4 books. Were you a trained writer, a trained journalist? Is that where you started in this? How did you wander into the book writing part of your career?
I went to college, and it was radio and television broadcasting that I was studying at college. And the written part, honestly, my dad wrote a book. So I wanted to, and sadly I lost my dad last year, and I wanted to, thank you. I wanted to be like him. And I've always had his father was a poet. So there's been that strand, that narrative in the family of creativity, I would say. And I found that I loved a blank page and I could go anywhere with it. Our daughter, we love the fact that she just reads and reads and reads, and we do a podcast together, her and I, and I'm trying to get her into writing as well. She's very creative with the pen, but the writing perspective just came about kind of naturally. It wasn't really something that I studied. I was more vocal. I was more radio and TV orientated, and the law and the legal aspect of that. So the writing part came about. I woke up in the middle of the night one night in 2006, having covered Hearts and Vladimir Romanov and getting rid of the manager. Ironically, the manager he got rid of is the uncle of Craig Burley, who I now work with. His name was George Burley. And they sacked him. And I thought, I know enough stuff. Why can't I write a book about it? And I knew enough people that could give me stuff that I didn't know. And that just led to other things. I then ghost wrote 3 books. One who played for Scotland, Gary Mackay, who scored the goal that actually got the Republic of Ireland to the Euros for the first time in '88. Stevie Nicol, I wrote his book. Former Liverpool player who I work with at ESPN, former New England Revolution coach for many years, and his assistant, the wonderful Paul Mariner, sadly no longer with us, former England striker. And let's just say that those books could not be written these days because of the stuff that they got up to wouldn't have been possible because of social media and camera phones and everything like that. But the one thing I said to Stevie when I was writing his book, and he's a fellow Scot like me, he's from the West Coast. I said, look, he said a sentence one day using a word, which was fine, but it wasn't a word that I would assume Stevie Nicol would use very often. And I said to him, look, I don't want to be disrespectful, but anytime you say that to someone, you know you're about to be disrespectful, so you make it as funny as possible. And you say, I don't know how many people think you actually know that word. I want this to be as authentic as possible in your word. A ghostwriter is basically the voice of the person they're writing about. So we wrote it like that. We took out the word, even although he'd said it, and we put it into more layman's terms. So from the first book, Believe, which is behind me, which was the kind of the story of the Lithuanian Russian megalomaniac, to Stevie and Paul's books, very different, but they all start with a blank page. And sadly, Paul died when I was writing his book, died of a brain tumor. So that was very difficult as well. And there's a wonderful friend of mine by the name of Brad Feldman, who was the play-by-play for New England Revolution. He used to work with Paul. Paul was his analyst for many, many years. And they sat down back in 2004, 2005, not to write a book, but just to get Paul's thoughts on it. So without those 20,000 words from Paul that Brad gave me, which I was able to kind of manipulate into some semblance of prose, without that, it would have been a lot harder to complete that book. So you need a little bit of help. You need a little bit of good fortune in any industry, media, writing books or whatever. But you also need to have and build up relationships so that when you do pick up the phone to people and they see who's calling, they're like, oh, it's such and such, I'll answer that, rather than looking at their phone and go, nah, I'm not bothered with that.
Yeah. Do you have something roiling around in your head now that you want to write?
I said I was done after Paul. That was an emotional roller coaster with his passing as well. I thought that would have been a nice high to go out. But there's a gentleman who owned the top behind me, Craig Gordon. And Craig is a very good friend of mine. I've known Craig since he was 17. Funnily enough, my wife, who I've been together with since 1998, her brother played with Craig for the under-10s, under-11s, under-12s growing up. So she's known him even longer. He was at my wedding, and he was Britain's most expensive goalkeeper when Roy Keane paid Hearts $9 million to get him for Sunderland. He will hopefully be Scotland's goalkeeper at the World Cup. I wonder if that might... there'll be other people who would want to write his book as well. And I have no issue if they were to do it. But if he was to come calling, he would probably be the only person that would persuade me to pick up the pen again. Because my wife's delighted that I'm not going to write any more books. So I don't know if I'm brave enough, John, to say to her, by the way, Craig called and he wants me to write another book. You certainly don't do it for the money. Trust me. You do it for the love of the game.
Yeah, yeah. So what is it about this work, as we sort of wrap this up here, Mark, and thanks a million for your time.
Sure.
What is it about this work that gets you out of the door every morning to do it?
It's never the same. It's never the same. Your lectures will never be the same. 2 days
true.
running.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There are people who want a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, weekends off, because it fits their lifestyle. No problem. No issues with that whatsoever, because it fits. Different strokes for different folks, as we would say. Different things get you excited. And for me, it's that last minute goal or that unbelievable strike from distance that unbelievable putt or an incredible hole out from off the green or a second shot hold from the fairway at a major tournament. It's that Grand Slam. It's that 10,000 Roger Federer fans who were heading down out of their seats after he'd won. Was I still there? Had I finished my report? It's the different aspect of day-to-day life and not knowing what's next. We've both been in the sports world for long enough. You'll have seen plenty when you were covering soccer. We think we've seen it all, but we never will. And that's what gets me out of bed. Whether it's the NWSL and the access that we get to the girls and the coaches the day before and the phone calls, which we don't have the luxury of doing for La Liga, even though we are rights holders. That, for me, covering NWSL is one of the highlights of what I do. I don't get to do it often, but when I do get to travel to the games, go to cities I haven't been to before, Kansas is next on the list. I would love to go there. That's what gets me up in the morning. That text from my boss that says, okay, in the next couple of weeks, here's your schedule. You're like, yeah, brilliant. I don't know what I'm doing next month as far as work is concerned, and I like that. And I'm not sure what kind of reaction you're going to get from your students the next time you have a lecture in front of them. But there'll be one that surprises you and makes you think, yeah, it's all worthwhile. That's why we do it.
Yeah, on that matter, standing in front of 240 students sometimes, or whether it's 20 students, there's a certain, sorry, there's a certain performance art in that. That's different than broadcasting. That's different than radio. That's different than television. But it is a certain performance art. And on the matter of something new happens every day. The late Hank Greenwald was the voice of the San Francisco Giants for a long time, and I worked at the radio station that carried the Giants games. And he said, believe it or not, in 162 games a year, every single day I see something I didn't see before, that I've never seen. And that is one of the things that makes this really cool.
And I agree with that. And one of the highlights, if not the highlight, and I've done thousands of football games, thousands of soccer games in my life, and there are many highlights from them. But one of the biggest highlights in my journalism life, my broadcast life, was when I covered the first Field of Dreams. We had the ESPN had a baseball show with Major League Baseball for the British audience that was produced in Bristol. Myself and Phil Murphy, who's a Sports Centre anchor, we were the hosts of that. And we did 3 World Series. We had a 3-year deal. We did 3 World Series. We were in Washington and Houston for 7 games and didn't see a single home win in that first 2019 World Series that finished 4-3. We never got the chance to celebrate with the home fans until COVID was 2020, until 2021 when it happened. Finally, we got a home win in Atlanta, and we enjoyed that. But Field of Dreams, to see the likes of Aaron Judge and all the other players, it was the Yankees and the White Sox. Normally they're sat there, they've got their headphones in or they're watching whatever. Everyone was like, wow, eyes wide open. And this is the Field of Dreams, and playing in the corn, playing catch with their buddies. And they've seen the movie. And because it was something different and it was something unique, I've got photos sitting on the swinging white chair outside the White House in Dubuque, Iowa. Just incredible. But to see what it meant to sportsmen and sportswomen who do things that they never thought they would get the opportunity to do. Your bank balance is the last thing you're thinking about at that stage. And if they're getting excited about it, imagine what it's like for us. The only issue we had that time, we filmed in the Field of Dreams maze, and we were meant to film for 15 minutes, and we got lost. They closed it for us, and we got lost in the maze, and it was roasting hot. And we were in there for an hour, and our poor cameraman, who's carrying this giant bit of gear, is like, you know where you're going, don't you? You stop the filming. And he's like, you know where you're going? I was like, yeah, sure. We got lost, and there was no one around because they shut the maze for us. So we eventually got out. I think it was just under an hour it took for us to get out. But just brilliant stories. And the people of Iowa, because they don't get many visitors. apart from those that are going to Field of Dreams. Just magnificent. That's what it's all about. Doing things that you never thought you'd get the chance to do, meeting special people who love the fact that you've made an effort to go there. That's what life's about, whether it's your job or whatever it is. Just open your horizons, get out there, because this is a marvelous country, and it's got a lot more than just the big cities on the east and the west coast and down in Texas.
Yeah, that's true. How old were you when you first thought you wanted to do this?
News was my bag. That's how I started. Funnily enough, one of the things that I think your students and every other journalism student, you're going to get a lot of letters. You're going to get a lot of knockbacks that say no, because think about it. You say you speak to like 250 students. A lot of them are going for the same role. So if there's only one role available, there's going to be a lot of people that are disappointed. So I wrote a letter when I was at school, 13 years old, just turned 14, I think it was, on work experience. And I wrote a letter to the local radio station asking for work experience. And I got the generic one back. Dear Mark, sorry, but blah, blah, blah. So there's two ways here. You can give up and look for something else, or you can find another way. And I just wanted that whole newsroom, and I hadn't even thought about sport at the stage. I just wanted something a little bit different, not your 9 to 5. So I said to my father, who was a detective inspector with the police, I said, do you know anybody who in the press office at where you work? And he's like, yeah. How? I said, do you think they would know anybody at Radio 4? He goes, yeah, he speaks about this guy called David Johnson all the time. I said, would you mind if he was to ask him? And then I can write another letter in. And I'm 13, 14 at the time. So he's like, yeah, sure, I can do that. So he asked him, and it got back. Yeah, write another letter in. We'll see what we can do. So I wrote another letter. Yeah, sure. In you come. Have work experience. So that's how I got in when I was just 14 years old, and I did news. But the big break came in 1996 when we had an idea to do a soccer commentary of Hearts against Porto in a pre-season friendly. And I was the assistant sports editor at the time. Sports editor and I went along. He was going to do the commentary. I was going to do the analysis. He forgot his prescription specs and was as blind as a bat without them. So I had to do the commentary. And the rest, as they say, is history.
And here you are. I'm going to do the math 30 years later and loving it every minute still.
This is March the 30th, will be the 30th anniversary of my first public broadcast. And one of the best things that my college tutor said to me, he's like, I don't know what you're all going to end up doing in life. If you work in this industry, then good on you. He says, but if you happen to, he was a wise old soul. He says, if you happen to, he says, take a tape recording of your first bulletin. And I did, and I still have it. And I sound very squeaky. I sound dreadful. But that was my breakthrough. And that piece of advice, without it, I would never have kept that. It was March the 30th, 1996, was my first ever broadcast. And in next month, it will be 30 years that I've been doing this. And the voice is slightly changed from back in the day, and it's slightly slower, so I can be understood a little bit easier.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I've taken way more time than I promised. I appreciate it. It's been a great chatting with you, and it's been fun getting to know you. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Thanks so much to Mark Donaldson for his time. We appreciate it very much. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you can join us next time on the Soccer Media Podcast. I'm John Shrader.